Welcome to the MTA International Studios in Silver Spring, Maryland. Today we will be discussing on Open Forum, faith and tolerance. There's new research from Pew that says that USA and United Kingdom are two countries that are showing an increasing rise in religious discrimination. And we're seeing lots of challenges in that, from Charlie Hebdo in France to various other parts of the world in the United States and so on. We have three experts in the room today. Starting on my right is Tariq Sharif. Tariq is a vice president of marketing at a Fortune 1000 company, loves basketball, and is married with two kids, a boy and a girl. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Next, we have Imam Talha Ali, who is an imam with the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. He's based out of Washington, D.C., and works on public affairs in Congress and in various areas of Washington, D.C. He's married and loves to travel. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And on the far end, we have Mahmoud Ahmed, who's a practicing attorney in Washington, D.C., who works in the litigation area, loves to run, and is married with two kids, both girls. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Great. So Mahmoud, size this up for us. What is the difference between faith and tolerance?
You know, I think we really need to think back. All of our modern societies, the US and Europe, are forged out of centuries of warfare between Catholics and Protestants. And the way that was put to bed was by agreeing that everybody would respect each other's faith. And today, with the rise of both extremist Islamic elements and the rise of far right-wing parties across Europe and even in the United States, we're seeing that compromise, that foundation challenged. And that's really the problem we're facing today.
So Imam Talha, you are a person of faith. How do you share the faith of Islam in America, in Washington, D.C.? What are the types of things you're doing?
I think what we need to realize is that being secular does not mean that we have to be against all the religions. I think being secular and being tolerant means that we allow other religions, all religions, to be able to participate in discussion and to be able to present their teachings and their thoughts about a certain topic.
Great. And Tariq, in your life, you work in marketing. You hear from lots of religions. How do you discriminate, and how do you discuss this with people that don't belong to your faith?
I think it starts with a personal caring for the other person. At the end of the day, nobody's going to agree on almost all subjects of the way they lead their life and their religion. So there has to be a free flow of ideas, but done in a way in which I'm sharing with you and you're sharing with me because we deeply care about each other.
In a democracy, though, we're supposed to have freedom of religion, and we have freedom of religion here. So what's the problem?
Well, I think that there's absolutely freedom of religion and freedom of speech, but we also know that at certain times the way we express to each other, those things can cause a reaction from the other person. So sometimes it's common sense in terms of picking things and doing it in a way that is, again, caring for the other person and not done in a way to antagonize another person.
You know, there's a quote of President Obama, and I'll read it to you. Every person has a right to practice their faith how they choose, or practice no faith at all, and to do so free of persecution and fear of discrimination. He shared this to a young audience recently in India. India has been going through some challenges as well in religious discrimination. So in America, though, I mean, everyone has a right to practice. So where do the challenges come in? Why is there discrimination? I'll give you an example of Muslims, where they make up of 2% of the population, but discrimination claims are in 25%. They're more discriminated than homosexuals. They're more discriminated than Hispanics, than African Americans. It's because of faith. So what's going on in America? Mahmoud?
No, I think what's happening is that, as I said before, you know, there are laws on the books to protect people from discrimination. But the real reason this is happening is because we've started, as Tariq said, we've stopped having these personal conversations, and we've stopped thinking about our institutions in a way that foster respect and tolerance for each other. And that's really what's going on, is that you're seeing people's shared understanding of what's acceptable were between maybe Christians and maybe even Jews, but when you introduce other religions into the space, that hasn't sort of been worked out yet. And I think we need to have those conversations.
But it's just, let's switch the democracy side of this equation. These cartoons in France, are they okay in your book?
That's a good question. I mean, so I think at the end of the day, whether or not we have a legal restriction on this, I think is subject to a lot of factors. I think each country has its own culture. In for instance, in Europe and the United States, there's a strong emphasis on free speech and the allowing everybody to express their opinion. At the same time, I think a newspaper or a internet provider, when they think about what they should police on their own, they can make some judgments about whether or not they think something is appropriate. And just as CNN doesn't run the images of ISIS beheading American journalists, because that would cause a lot of people pain and suffering. In the same way, I think that some recognition ought to be given by these companies and other actors to the emotional impact of these cartoons or other offensive images.
Tariq, recently the Pope was quoted as saying that, if you talk about my mom, I'm going to punch you in the face. And I think what he meant about that is being discriminate and not saying negative things. Why is that such a hard idea to grasp in a democracy?
Well, I do think that we have a very proud heritage in America, and one we're all proud to be a part of freedom. I think this country was founded on that concept that you as an individual have that independent freedom. And that's a great heritage, but it also means that we need to talk more about responsibility. I certainly can't go into a movie theater, in a crowded theater, and yell fire, as the saying goes, right? So yelling fire in a religious environment and in the media can cause that same type of reaction. So we have to find a way to do that more constructively.
But there's this forced challenge. I mean, there's organized groups spending millions of dollars against Islam, for instance. There's a research that showed about $50 million went into an anti-Muslim Islamic message in America. Various groups in America have done that, and you're focusing just in the U.S. So there's an organized campaign against a religion. Should that religion just accept it and be okay with it? Or should there be certain things where charitable dollars and other things, putting down another religion is not fair? And where do you draw the line?
Well, being a member of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and founded by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who we believe was the Messiah, he made it very clear, and we members feel very strongly about this, that there is not a violent reaction to those things. I mean, taking the example of Gandhi, there are ways that we can express ourselves using the pen, and again, fact-based, that we want to demonstrate that we are a peaceful religion, and that's not what we're about. And we think if we can use our voice in that way, we can actually help to change those perceptions.
Great. Imam Talha, I and most people are opposed to the term Islamic terrorist. The fact still remains, these individuals in France with Charlie Hebdo that went inside with guns, they were Muslims, and they were defending their religion. Does your religion preach that? And how does your religion preach defending your religion when someone makes a cartoon caricature of the Prophet of Islam, that they can go and stop that by force if necessary?
Absolutely not. Quran, the book of which the Muslims follow, which gives us a code of conduct in every matter of life, is very clear. The jazā'u sayyi'atin sayyi'atun misluha, meaning that you are to retaliate in the same manner that a person has hurt you. And the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, was very clear that nowadays if people are making cartoons against Muhammad, you write books to answer that. But I also want to touch upon the point about Islamic terrorism, or using the word Islamic terrorism. I think my problem with terminologies like this is when we use words like Islamic terrorism or Islamic State for ISIS, we're actually empowering such groups. We should be empowering the moderate Muslims, but by using words like Islamic terrorism, we're empowering them, who are using my religion, Islam, to promote their own political agendas.
But there must be some truth to it if they're defending their religion, and then that group, ISIL, various groups out there, those groups are using religion as a catalyst to recruit and retain individuals who believe they're defending Islam. So is there some connection here?
So you have to realize that not just Islam or not just religion, but every ideology in history of mankind has been used for political or personal purposes. So if you go back, just the history of religion, every single religion, be it Christianity, Judaism, Islam, or any other religion, Hinduism, have been used to promote their own political agendas. And violence has been used in the name of religion. Similarly, with ideologies like atheism, which has nothing to do with religion, has been used for personal agendas. And similar thing has been happening to Islam. As far as jihad or certain teachings about jihad being in Quran, yes, they are there, but they have a different meaning.
Mahmoud, tell us about the rest of the world. Religious persecution, it's pretty prevalent. Pakistan, Indonesia. It persists. It's not just an American problem, and perhaps in America we're at a gold standard while we're not perfect, and the discrimination is increasing in America and United Kingdom. But tell us what's going on in the rest of the world in a quick overview.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what you're seeing again is you're seeing, even as we have has an increased respect for human rights across the globe. In recent years, you've seen extremism rise. Across the globe, you're seeing places like Indonesia, where you mentioned, where the Ahmadi community, the Christian community, in Pakistan, where the Ahmadi community, the Shia community, the Christian community, in Saudi Arabia.
But now you're talking about, not only is there discrimination against people of other faith, there's discrimination against people of their same so-called same faith in Pakistan, Indonesia, some of these countries. Where does that come from? Is there different interpretations of the same doctrine?
Yes, absolutely. And at its core, I think it's the problem you identified at the beginning of the show. It's this idea that tolerance has broken down. It's that people are trying to impose their own very narrow, very circumscribed version of whatever faith they want to practice, pure, that they claim is pure, and they want to basically jam that down everybody else's throats. To
the point of murder.
To the point of murder, to the point of persecution, to the point of forcing people to adopt their behaviors and their habits, and basically prohibit them from practicing their own faith freely. I mean, it's a global problem.
And what is being done about this in those countries? I mean, let's do the case study of Pakistan. It seems like it made the State Department's list as one of the most disturbing countries, I believe.
That's right. I mean, I think what I think is being done is people are starting to see that this has a really corrosive impact. That discrimination on the basis of faith is not only impacting those communities, but is leading to the kinds of terrorism that we're now seeing cropping up all over the globe. And it's not just a rights problem, it's a security problem. And as we all know, at the end of the day, security tends to trump rights. And so I think when you see that nexus, you're seeing governments starting to wake up to the reality that you have to curb this type of ideology, really, in order to stop terrorism and stop extremism.
Tariq, in America, Franklin Graham is another example of, some have called him a terrorist and extremist as well, from the standpoint of how he's spread hate in Duke University. And there was an incident of the call to prayer, and he asked people to stop funding it and he's called Islam a vile and evil religion. So it's not just about Islam. There's these religious leaders that are doing that. How are they being addressed?
Well, I think, first of all, it's important that we understand that these ideas and these religions are a very convenient way for people to gain personal and political means. They can attach to something popular, like, unfortunately today, bashing of Islam, can very well get them what they personally achieve. But again, I think the way it has to be done is personal dialogue. Just to give a quick example, someone attended a local program of ours who was very much against Islam, but didn't totally understand what we were doing. And actually, after attending that program, they went back and had dialogue with their friends and family and said, you're not getting the message. You're getting a distorted message. So we can have that impact. We have to sincerely and out of good faith go and talk to people.
So there's not a good awareness of what Islam is.
There truly isn't.
But yet, you would think someone like Franklin Graham, a person of faith, is aware. And he's saying Islam is an evil religion.
Well, and there's also political people who certainly probably know a lot more than they're saying, and certainly should know better. I can't comment on their motivations, but I can say that if anyone is willing to take that open point of view and not be politically or otherwise motivated, I think they'll see that the faith of Islam is very much about being a tolerant religion. And that's the example that our prophet and our founder gave.
Would you call Franklin Graham an extremist and a terrorist?
I think anybody who's going to denounce Islam along the lines of what he has is going to be in the category of those that are extreme and are not helping to have that collaborative conversation.
But Imam Talha, so we've got this example. You and Franklin Graham are both faith leaders, and I'm sure you believe, because you're a faith leader in Islam, you believe Islam is the right way. So you do talk about other religions, and yours is the best path, so theirs is not the best path. So would you use the tactics of Franklin Graham and call Christianity an evil religion? How would you go about it? You guys are both people of faith.
Absolutely
And
not.
you're defending your own turf.
Right. The example that our Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, has set forth for us is very clear. There's a famous incident where there was a 3-day debate between him and the Christians. And the way this debate ended was that Christians, they were in Medina, which was Islamic state at that time, it was a Muslim state, and they said, we don't agree with you. And he said, well and good. It's a debate. We had a dialogue, a very tolerant dialogue where we listened to each other. You don't agree with my thinking, I don't agree with yours. And that's how it ended.
And what do you learn from that?
You learn from that it is okay to have disagreements. What religion teaches us, that you have your own thinking, and God has taught you, and you believe that your path is the correct path. But that does not mean that you should impose your path upon other people.
But is it okay to share what you think is wrong about other religions, whereas Franklin Graham believes Islam is an evil religion? Is that okay? Would you call their religion an evil religion if you believe it?
In a humane way, yes. Using terms like an evil religion might not go a long way, but explaining that Muslims who believe in Islam might not be an evil religion, but Muslims are doing evil things. Saying things like that which are accepting of other religions, that we understand that there is a large population of Muslims who are peaceful, who are tolerant, but there is a small group is a different thing. But categorizing a whole religion as an evil machine is completely intolerant.
But their argument is there's enough of these bad apples that there must be something in the religion that's causing them to do this.
Then let's have an argument about this topic from a religious point of view. Present the verses of the Quran, present the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, and if that is true, then you have won the debate from an academic point of view. But just name calling and labeling groups as a certain type, evil or whatever, does not really work. If you want to talk in the marketplace of ideas, you need to present your ideas. You can't really just go and label people that this is an orange. You have to prove this is an orange. It tastes like an orange.
That's a great point. Mahmoud, you're a lawyer. I mean, you heard Tariq refer to you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Can you yell hate Islam and draw cartoons? Are those two things similar?
You know, I think it's a very tricky subject, and I think it's one that's evolving, right? So I think laws tend to adapt somewhat with the circumstances of any particular time. And the challenge here is, on the one hand, respecting everyone's ability to have their opinions, and a right that people have fought for several centuries. On the other hand, it's realizing that some people are literally, as Tariq said, doing this just to provoke, and that it's causing a lot of anger, causing a lot of violence. And you don't, on the one hand, want to legitimize those who are causing the violence, and on the other hand, you also don't want to say that it's okay to just insult for the sake of insulting. So I think
So how do you preserve the dignity of these people of faith and all their believers? There's billions of them out there, as well as the rights of the artists to be able to express themselves.
Right.
How do you balance those two? Where's the balance? Which cartoon is okay and which is not?
So I think that balance has to be negotiated. I don't think it's up to any of us to say opinion? Yes. I think that balance has to be, there has to be a healthy debate within each democracy, and the people in each country who are the voters of that country, and the public intellectuals and the politicians have to weigh in, and there has to be an honest, hard conversation. And I think wherever that ends up, and whatever laws or codes get in.
But what I would argue with you is there isn't just one democracy anymore. I mean, the borders are, because of the internet and other things, the borders are muffled now. What happens in France affects things in America. We see those pictures as fast as they see them. So how do you, in an international community, how do you balance this?
Well, certainly, but I think at the end of the day, the international community will have to act. But I think international action is always forged by consensus among the nations that are in the international conversation. But I think, to your point, I think the most important thing that all of us can do is to let that debate play out, and to really speak the truth to the people who are in positions where they can make decisions, right? So Google, deciding whether to air the really offensive video, the Innocence of Muslims video that came out a couple of years ago, should YouTube have had that on their website? That's a decision YouTube can make on its own, right? Should newspapers reprint the Charlie Hebdo cartoons, the ones that were, literally just designed to provoke the feelings of Muslims? I think that is a decision they can make on their own. And I think as people who care about dignity, as people who care about respectful conversations, we should be out there advocating that everyone should show restraint, and should think about moderation and respect in their own decision making.
Tariq, how do you respond to this at home? You're a marketing professional. I mean, there's a battle for ideas, and there's a lot of consumption happening in homes across the world. How does an average person respond to all this? They see Muslims going into buildings where there's cartoons and they're shooting guns, whereas those Muslims do not look very good. Whereas on the other side, you see this blatant disregard for someone's faith through these cartoons, which is not respectful, and there's no dignity in that. How does a consumer of this information react to all this?
Well, I would suggest that people look at, for example, our business environment, because we have invested a lot in understanding organizational behavior. And working in a large corporation, they're run very efficiently. They have to be these days. And I would say there's a great exchange of ideas, for example, within the walls of a business. And if I want to provide you feedback, it has to be done, it's prescribed to be done in a respectful way. I'll talk to you first about something that we share and give you something that's positive, and then I'll start the dialogue about where I may have a disagreement. But these types of things are not tolerated within the walls of a business because we know they're destructive. Why do we allow them in the political environment? We have to try to use some of those same principles.
But as a consumer, how do you have these interfaith dialogues? What are ways to get beyond the misconceptions?
Well, certainly I think having dialogues is important. I certainly think that as ambassadors of a peaceful way of approaching those things, we have to show it through our example. I mean, many people have said to us, now I know a Muslim, I understand better. And we know from statistics many Americans don't know a Muslim, so we have to show them through a personal example.
But is this a Muslim jihad that's being waged against the cartoon Charlie Hebdo with guns? And do they feel like they're fighting for Islam? Is this a jihad?
Well, those who are doing things in the name of violence, in the name of jihad, is certainly something we would disagree with. We believe that jihad is my personal struggle, and my personal struggle is not to react violently or even in an upset manner when you give me something that is a different point of view, but to encourage the dialogue. That's the personal jihad we believe in.
So how are you sharing the faith of Islam in a peaceful way, as one example of many?
By having dialogues.
Give me an example. What is the Ahmadiyya Muslim community doing in Washington, D.C. and across the country?
So for example, each year we have our annual convention, and we make it a point to invite as many people, as many non-Muslim people to this convention as possible. So last year's convention, which was held in August, I was there in Harrisburg for more than 3 weeks. And I met with every single mayor of the nearby towns. I met with all the city councilors. I met with the sheriffs of the people. I met with intellectuals, telling them that we're having this program. We're discussing peaceful ways to resolve conflicts around the world. And let's come together and talk about these issues. And we had a very good response.
I heard you're also running some campaigns, Muslims for Peace, Muslim for Life. You guys have run campaigns, Day on the Muslims on the Hill, which has been covered by national press, I hear. What are these things?
These are all efforts and initiatives that we have to educate, I think, the American public about the true message of Islam and what Muslims have to bring to the table, the service that we want to provide to our fellow citizens, moving our country forward together, and really leveraging all that we've built together to achieve a tolerant society. And in some ways we're doing that with a domestic focus, and sometimes we're doing that to also look outward to the world and stop persecution.
Tell me the nuts and bolts of your campaigns. What are you doing in a tolerant way?
We are literally knocking on doors. We are literally handing out, in informational pamphlets. We have.
What kind of? I've heard Muslims for Loyalty. What does that mean?
It's a very simple message. It's a message built on the message given by the Holy Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, peace be upon him, and by the founder of our community, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, which is that every Muslim, wherever that Muslim resides, must be utterly loyal to his or her own nation. And we are asking Muslims and others in this country to step up and take that pledge and work together to kind of eliminate any misperceptions or misinformation that might exist about Muslims or anybody else having dual loyalties.
Great. And Muslims for Life, what is that?
Muslims for Life started as a reaction to 9/11, and we thought that rather than show that Muslims shed blood, as was the perception on 9/11, why not show that Muslims could donate blood for life? And as a result, we started blood drives across the country, including on Capitol Hill, and we've saved more than 100,000 lives through those blood drives. So those are constructive ways that we can also change the perception.
And what is your message to the leadership and public officials in Washington, D.C.?
So when I meet with public officials, I mostly talk to them about that. Look, you need to first understand the message of Islam, and then present it to your people, because you're the representative of the people. And we have noticed that certain public officials have come up and made very intolerant statements about Islam. So teaching them about the true teachings of Islam, and then asking them to please represent the true teachings of Islam to their people.
And how do you react to some of this Chapel Hill shooting where 3 Muslims were killed? Is America becoming less tolerant? I mean, is it visually now becoming the case? There's Chapel Hill shooting. There's been some arson attempts. There's been many instances now.
Statistics do show that America is becoming more intolerant towards Muslims. The hate crimes against Muslims have risen in the past few years, and Chapel Hill was the epitome of that intolerance. But at the same time, I do think that the American conscience is still very tolerant to other religion. This country was founded on a very tolerant basis, and I think if part of the problem is that these people are not educated to the true teachings of Islam. Once they find out what Islam really is, once they find out what religion really is, then I think this extremism would come down. So I think the main thing which all 3 of us have been hitting upon over and over is dialogue and educating people.
That's great. And how, I mean, have you guys had access to elected officials like the White House, like the State Department, like congressional officials, senators in leadership positions? How have they reacted to your message?
Absolutely. I think that there's a great hunger in America for information about Islam and about Muslims, and a great hunger for learning about Muslims who are willing to stand up for the true message of Islam. I think sometimes American officials are sometimes a little frustrated that although they hear about Islam being a religion of peace, that they aren't seeing the moderate Muslims, the Muslims who are standing up for that message. And I think when they hear our message, and they hear our message of tolerance, of respect, and I think, reacting to the Chapel Hill.
Have you reached the highest levels of government in sharing this?
I think certainly most recently the president highlighted a member of our community as having been at the forefront of fostering tolerance through various means. And I think going back to the Chapel Hill shootings, I think it's also important to realize these are potentially very divisive moments. And I think it's important for us as citizens, as Muslims, as people of faith, to step back and not to let the narrative of hatred on both sides drive the conversation, but to seize on these types of tragedies, whatever the motives might have been, whatever actually might have happened, to really have an open dialogue about how we move forward.
Great. In closing, tell me what you guys are doing to promote tolerance. This is the lightning round, 10 seconds. What are you doing?
Well, I just emphasize that we are doing a lot on Capitol Hill. We are working with congressmen, senators.
Great.
We have a caucus on Congress to help do that.
Great.
Educating, going door to door, going to grassroots level, and educating the main public.
Our motto is love for all, hatred for none. Every meeting we have is built around that motto. So everything we do is built around that.
Great. This has been a session of Open Forum where we've discussed faith and tolerance, how we protect the dignity of all faiths, yet understand that people need to be able to express themselves in a democracy. Hopefully you've enjoyed the show. This is from the MTA International Studios in Silver Spring, Maryland. Thank you for joining us.